Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. For those who don't know me, my name's Mark, and professionally, I am a lifestyle financial planner. I work with women in finance and their families, helping them understand what their money can do for them. Personally, I'm a husband to my beautiful wife, Nicole, and a father to my two amazing children, Luke and Sephora. My family is my purpose. They are the reason I do what I do, and we are on a journey to build our best lives together. I feel really blessed that I also get to work with my clients in this regard and help them do the same thing for themselves and their families. Our guest this morning is Yvonne Killian. Professionally, Yvonne is a financial planning coach, amongst other things. She's got many letters behind her name, some of which are certified integral coach, certified life coach, certified Enneagram practitioner. So she's super certified, right, to do what she's going to do today. Personally, Yvonne is a wife to her husband and life partner, Tony. They're celebrating 30 years of marriage this year. Well done, Yvonne. That's quite an achievement. She's also a mom to two inspirational children whom she learns from every day. And Yvonne lives her life in order to make a difference towards positive change. She's also extremely giving of herself and to others, as is evidence in her presenting for us today. Just some quick housekeeping. We emailed through the workbooks yesterday that Yvonne will reference in her presentation. So please feel free to make some notes as we go along. And for those that haven't yet downloaded it, the link is available in the chat. So you can just click there and a PDF version will come up and you can work on there. There'll be a few poll questions coming on, so please participate in those. And you can send through any thoughts or questions you have via the Q&A or chat, and we will address them during the presentation or potentially at the end. Yeah, that being said, again, thank you for taking the time to be here. And yeah, over to you, Yvonne.
Morning to the listeners and to everybody that's taken the time out, guests of listeners and the panelists also joining and supporting me today. I'm really looking forward to taking you through something that I hope will be a little bit different. But maybe if I can ask you just quickly to share where you're from in the chat box and just let us know what things are like out your way. Always nice to connect and understand what's happening for you. So I think ultimately for today and by the end of this session, I would hope that you'll have some insight and understanding of what it is that you will need most for 2021. So I'm also going to try to make this session as interactive as possible and in really working through some of the content and the material, hopefully you'll get a sense of what it is that motivates you and how that informs your intention. And part of this experience will also talk to some reflective healing and release so that you can bring purpose to 2021. And it is a very different way to how we normally look to start a new year. So what I'd want to do first is just to share my screen and let me just get that to populate. Can everybody see my screen? Just do that again. Is it sharing now?
Yep.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks so much. Okay, so I just want to be able to. All right, so another aspect that I'm going to cover a little bit later in today's session is to take you through a little bit of a personality assessment using the Enneagram. And this will help you to map and leverage some of who you are and being the best of who you are. And it will also help to design something that you can have that's tangible and intentional so that it can serve you for this year that we're facing, 2021. And it's already February. I can't believe it. Goodness. So let's keep it fun. Reference to the notes and follow the read along on the workbook as we work through the slides. I think my only real request at this point is that you do participate and contribute where you're able to. And yeah, so to kick off, I'm going to ask you to share in the chat box with us what you think the difference is between goals and intentions. So this is the first activity I'm going to ask you to participate in. So share with us, what do you think the difference is in the chat box? And whilst you do that, I think I'm just going to talk to the word itself, intention, really captured me. And it is derived from Old French language. Intention, as I've spelled it at the top there, is derived from there. And in means inward reflection of something. So when doing a reflection, it then informs the moment you're in. And once you connect with this present moment, you are more aware. And this awareness is the catalyst then that empowers you to release for the way forward. So the gift of setting intentions is therefore the word itself for me. And I interpret it as a release from tension and a release from wounding, especially for this past year that we've had in 2020. But doing so without really diminishing what we've gone through for the year, and to really understand and to take forward what can work for us as we embrace what is healing and possible for 2021. So yeah, I don't know, Mark, do you want to share some of those differences from the chat box?
So Yvonne, it seems people know what goals are, right?
Yeah.
Those are quite, I think they're easy to sum up. It's almost tangible, outward looking things. And my opinion is that you're here to explain to us what intentions are, right? I think intentions is a little bit tougher to sum up.
Yeah, and I think that if you really look at intentions and goals, as I've summarized it in this little comparative, the differences are very clear. And it's quite interesting how spiritual in nature and nearly philosophical intention setting can be. But that is really where meaning lies and purpose lies. So the reality is that as a person, you're always going to be that person that people love, and that person that people want to be with and learn from. And people resonate with you because of who you are. So that essential self is what attracts other people to you. And this is really where the intentional setting links back to that what's underlying and not obvious. So goals, as you can see, is a little bit more directive. It's future focused, whereas intentions are informed by the moment that you're in and who you choose to be in that moment. Yeah, so
Yvonne,
that's really the key differences.
Cecilia said here, intentions are internal, which I think makes a lot of sense from what you're saying.
Absolutely, Cecilia. And on the next slide, you'll actually see exactly how I'm going to motivate that, because intentions will obviously, and we hope from today, lead the way towards significant impact for empowering positive outcomes for you for 2021. But I want to just quickly pause and show you what makes that so. So if we consciously project who we are, we only show 5 to 10% to the world. And that's what sits above the surface on this iceberg, the tip of the iceberg. And it's a fraction of allowing people to see our true selves. Whereas 90 to 95% of our true way of being in the world is unconscious and not visible at all. And that is what sits below the surface. So our individual personalities are shaped by our values and our desires, past experiences, even our belief systems. And that will determine then how we see the world and how we show up in the world. So yeah, I think that for me, it's important that there's some understanding also then to link what's below the surface to not how and what we are, but why we are. And that's where the motivation sits for intention. So connecting with what we call above the surface, we're talking to ego. What is this status that you project out into the world? The mask that we wear, we all wear a mask. That's how and what you do. But in essence, what's not visible, that's below the surface. And that's why you do and what makes you be the person that you are. So that's really what I'm hoping to tap into today so that we can better inform intentional outcomes for how you want to be going forward. It's going to probably help you significantly with some insight into a bit of self-awareness, and it will bring some meaning toward your existence and being, ultimately enabling some understanding and maybe even some learning around not just your strengths, but also your weaknesses, and how even your weaknesses can inspire possibility and provide some purpose and clarity for what is most important for you. So that's what I'm hoping to achieve out of the session today. Right.
Just before you just move forward there, even just that visual representation on that previous slide, it says a lot. You know, above the surface is ego, as you've mentioned, but everything else, there's so many other things that are going on underneath. If you just look at the illustration, so above the line, there's one or two things, but below is essence, assumptions, motivation. So there's so much more that we almost need to dig deeper into ourselves to sort of work on the projection that the rest of the world sees.
Yeah, and I think that's really the purpose of today, because before you can truly set an intention for how you want to be, you need to kind of have some insight of what it is that really motivates you and that drives you. And that is why you are the person you are. And sometimes it's difficult for people to understand why they show up the way they do. And we choose to go through life. And some of us are completely blind to what holds us back and what limits us. And it's often exactly what our behaviors are. And behaviors we can change. But what sits in essence of what shaped you, that doesn't necessarily ever change. Remember, the tip of the iceberg can melt away a bit and then it comes up again. But that's what can change. We can chip away at that iceberg tip. But what sits below the surface is really what anchors you. But it's to understand what that means for you going forward. I hope that answers your question and your statement.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, so next up, really, I want to bust some myths around the blind spots we have as people when we make decisions. And ultimately, a decision based in fear, especially fear of the unknown, that's really the oldest and strongest emotion of mankind. And when we make decisions, our reptilian brain will determine our instinctual response or that gut response, and whether we'll be attracted or whether we'll move away from that specific moment or trigger event. And coupled with that, our emotions sit in our limbic brain, and how you feel about things, including how you feel about money even. All of that is directly linked to your experience of it. So the limbic system is then the control center, and that control center is emotionally driven from the brain. And that enforces 70% of how you're going to choose to respond to make a decision. Can you believe it? Your emotions decide how you're going to act and what you're going to do. And of course, that leaves so little for you to really prepare and to plan, and ultimately to understand what the impact is going to be on your life. So you'll be familiar with things like fight, flight, and freeze in a moment of threat. And the reason that happens is that we are programmed, and these instinctual responses are programmed to protect us and to help us feel safe when we feel threatened. So we will be governed by all those hormones that are released in that moment, but more so even than by governed by what those emotions are that are triggered in that moment. So, and for me, what holds us back here, and what the real blind spot is that we have so little agency on the impact this has on our lives, and that our emotions actually dictate how we're going to live our lives. So I'm hoping that we can flip that over on the next slide. Most of us do tend to be a little bit overconfident when we make decisions. And we believe the decisions that we make are the best for us. And that's a question for me, because especially during times of stress, we are not always aware of how to avoid or how to respond with resilience when we are disrupted or threatened. We don't know how to respond. I mean, COVID has taught us that. We were all in reactive mode and driven by and led by our emotions. So decisions are clouded with what is termed behavioral bias. And behavioral bias will impact how you manage your money, how you manage your life, how you manage your relationships, how you manage your environment. It will impact everything. And that is because of who you are and what your past experiences were. So we tend to, in a way, maybe what I should say here is that if you have a high intellect, that's one thing, because that's knowledge driven, and yes, knowledge is power. But what we are saying is that where you are more self-aware and you have more emotional intelligence, then it's easier for you to deal with life's disruptions. So for this reason, I just feel that we can spend a bit of time on who you are and just connecting with what that means for you and what it is that's important in your life and what motivates you. And I'm going to, and that will then require less energy to act. Acting organically happens out of that. And that's the power of setting intentions and connecting with why you do things the way you do. So I'm going to be using something called the Enneagram. And I don't know if any of you have had any exposure to the Enneagram. But what it does is it provides a bit of a diagnostic assessment, not just of your behavior, but also of why you behave the way that you do. It's a development model which I've experienced personally enables true possibility for your life. And a novel way, yes, it is a novel way in which you can work on those things that are most important for you. So our personalities, I've already mentioned, are shaped by the coping strategies that we develop as children. And we have these coping strategies, as I said, to feel safe and secure in trauma and also when we're stressed or threatened. And they are depicted as our defenses and as our behaviors and as the armor when and we carry that forward even in the way that we respond to our environment and others as adults. So yeah, it's different from other types of systems, this Enneagram assessment. And in my experience, it's probably one of the most helpful and accurate to enable using it for not just self-awareness, but also for personal growth. So you may be familiar with other personality assessments, and those mostly focus on it's either this or that systems So it kind of will determine whether you are extroverted, whether you are intellectual or creative. Whereas with the Enneagram is just so much more concerned with what drives our behaviors, other than just focusing on the behaviors themselves. So if you look at this visual depiction and you just read through the naming conventions that is in each one of the blocks, see which of these really resonate with you, that you can see come up for you. They are named this way for a very specific reason. So ultimately, I'm going to take you through a bit of a mini assessment, but I just want to caution, because the Enneagram is not going to limit you to put you in a box. That's not the intention of the Enneagram. Rather, it is to show you the box that you put yourself in, and it will also show you the way out in a fluid and dynamic way. And I'll explain a bit more around that a little bit later. So for now, I'm going to just share with you a little bit of what this assessment means. I'm going to refer you to your workbook, and you'll see on the next slide that I'm going to give you 2 groups of 3 statements each. And yeah, I strongly recommend that in your own time, in that workbook, I've even provided some descriptions, and maybe just read through those descriptions and notice what makes you feel uncomfortable and uneasy, because usually that is what you choose not to show the world, that 10%. It's what sits underneath. So it's really important that you are typing the person you are instead of the person you wish to be when I take you through this assessment. So the first group of statements is on the screen, and you'll see it is made up of a statement A, statement B, and statement C. So I need you to select either A, B, or C, just one of them, and you can note it down on that page 4 in your workbook. And yeah, reflect for a moment on your general behavior and the mood you're in when you engage with your environment and with people, even with yourself. Which one of these best describe you? And I'll give you a minute to work through that. If I can just get an indication of when we passed a minute. Okay, if we can, I think that's about a minute. Do we need more time?
Yeah, maybe just give it 30 seconds, Yvonne.
I'll do. I think someone just came online.
Yeah, I think it's good. You can move on.
Okay, so Marcus, if I could maybe call on you just to share the poll for us as well. I'm going to ask the audience just to indicate for me which of those statements they resonated most with, A, B, or C. If you can just tick for us on the poll, that would be really helpful. Okay, and Marcus, have we got the result for this poll as yet?
Yvonne, just give it a few more minutes. People are still voting.
Sure, thank you. Okay, are you able to share that with us, Marcus? Okay, so predominantly we have people that resonate most with statement C, and that refers to just being extremely responsible and dedicated. So the next grouping is going to talk to reflecting. I just want to see if it is actually populating. There we go. Reflecting in the second group around how you feel about life, also when you support yourself and others. So I really want you to be honest about this one, because it's not about who you desire to be, but how you really are. So spend a couple of moments, maybe a minute and a half, to read through these statements and decide which one best describes you. Okay, do we need more time?
I think that's good. Marcus, you can share the poll.
Okay, fabulous. Marcus, share the poll for everyone to select on the second group on the screen as well, if you don't mind. Thank you. So just whichever statement you selected, if you can also just pop that selection through. And then I'll shortly be sharing the results with you of what it means, what these numbers mean. How's it going there, Marcus? We're getting some votes in?
Yes, we are. Just give it a few more seconds. Just a few more people to vote.
Fabulous. Just to maybe manage expectations, this mini assessment will provide a core type resonance with about 75% accuracy. It's not the full Enneagram assessment. And as individuals and as people, we type ourselves. Whereas doing the diagnostic assessment, you basically, all of those biases that we have around and those blind spots that we have around ourselves is eliminated in a Socratic manner through questioning until that true core type is revealed. So it's a little bit more intense, and it's definitely got way more questions to work through. But yeah, at least there's some indication of what we can expect from the results today. How about it, Marcus? What's the poll saying? Mostly Ys and X's. Okay, so what is this saying? You can close the poll. Thank you very much. Okay, so the result then, you will combine and you will combine it either as, and you can see here, I've just shown what the results depict and what it matches with. So matching that result with with your basic type. And as a group, we are a CX, and CX is considerate helpers. That's what resonated most with most of you today as a group. Again, a considerate helper really lives life, and they're motivated by having to be liked. That is their core motivation in life. And very often, because of the altruistic nature of someone that is considerate and helping others, very often they forget about themselves and taking care of themselves. So what we project out into the world is actually our wounding and what we need most of. So that really is how Enneagram informs that which we withhold from ourselves but give to others. So your workbook will also give you some oversight of how these types of the Enneagram is described and what you may be blind to, and especially about your type. But you'll notice on this dashboard, this visual, that there are these 9 points of the 9 different archetypes. And they each represent this different personality in a naming convention. And it also shows you that core motivation for each one of these types. So the caution always is that the result is not to group you as an individual into any one of these 9 personality types, because that would just be too limiting. You'll always have access to and probably recognize yourself into each of these types. So if you look at this visual, you can actually see a good start is that understand what it is that motivates you, how you relate to a core type. And also, if we'll have time, we'll explore how the 2 types next to your basic type. So if we are considerate helper, how the strict perfectionist 1 and the competitive achiever, which is number 3, actually supports you as a considerate helper, and which one you access the best. And then we also, you'll notice that there's the inner flow of lines, and you will adopt certain behaviors and characteristics of any of these types, but specifically the ones that are linked to your number. You'll see those inner flow lines. And those will determine whether you are in a place of stretch or whether you are in a place of release, to help you get unstuck when you're faced with either a difficult situation or you just don't know what to do. You just paralyzed by the moment. Then what the Enneagram enables is for you to access those lines and to, So, yes.
Sorry, can I just jump in? So we've got a lot of people that are a CX, right? So a considerate helper. I'm just thinking about this now. So a considerate helper sounds like something I would, if that was me, which is not where I fall in. I fall into active controller. But I'm just thinking this through. So considerate helper is something that I could positively attach myself to or see in myself. But when I read the words have to be liked, it's not something that I want to resonate with, or if I think about it, am I the person that always has to be liked? Do I do things in order to be liked? Is that kind of what you're going with this? Is it maybe because that's not a very positive thing that you would want to think about yourself, but I'm guessing the point of this is to get an understanding of what you're doing, right? And are you doing it to be liked?
Yes. Yeah. And always giving all of yourself to others it may even land up that you depict behaviors that can show that you can be codependent of others, because you take on others' pain and suffering, and you really are out there to just give all of yourself to try and assist and help that person through whatever it is that they're going through. And ultimately, you get lost because you give so much of your time and energy and effort away, and you forget about yourself. There's a lot of self-forgetting that happens for the considerate helper. And that's why their line of stretch is for them to take a bit more control of themselves, which is to the 8, the active controller, and to have a bit more agency and influence in their lives. Whereas their line of release is down to, the intensely creative. And the intensely creative is to remind them, but they also worthy, that they also unique, and that they are entitled to all of that they give to others. In fact, they need it more than what they give to others. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that last statement is very powerful, I think.
Yeah.
To have that sort of understanding about yourself,
yes,
would be great. Anyway, carry on.
And then, of course, the wings that I was talking about, as a strict perfectionist, what it really helps the considerate helper to do is to create some structure in their lives, and to have support systems that they can engage with, so that they don't have to do this on their own and do everything for that other in order to be liked, but that they can actually deploy resources into helping them help the other. Does that make sense? And whereas the wing in the competitive achiever really embodies that commitment and responsibility, with also some security and safety that underpins that. And so these things start developing. I'm sorry, was I talking about 3 now? No. That's just to be adaptable, not to be so set in your own ways. I'm sorry. Competitive achiever talks to that. Because very often, as a helper, I've always done it this way, and it's always worked for me. And I've received a lot of benefit from helping others. And the vice of the 2 is pride, because they really believe they're doing and loving unconditionally, which is true. They really, at their core, that is why they do what they do, is they're seeking unconditional love. Okay. So maybe moving on, I am mindful of the time. We need to turn our attention now towards 2021. And yeah, just from what you've learned, I don't know if anyone wants to share, but yeah, how does this inform who you are on the previous slide, that result? Anyone want to share?
When you say inform who you are, what do you really?
Yeah, so from a behavioral point of view, the naming convention will inform how you show up to others. That's the tip of the iceberg. Okay. But the motivation is what sits underneath. So why do you show up that way? And that is what's sitting on the peripheral. Does that resonate with you, Mark? I mean, you said you're an active controller.
Yeah.
Okay. And is it because you're motivated by having to have control?
I don't think it's necessarily just having to have control. It's there's a greater purpose, and I feel I can achieve my purpose by being in control. By taking control of it myself, not leaving things to chance. But I can see how on the outside, that would look like I always need to be in control of everything.
And that's the basic desire, is to protect yourself and others that you care for. And that's why often they say with the with the 8 Enneagram, the active controller, you can liken that individual to barbed wire on the outside, but marshmallow on the inside.
It's probably very true.
Yeah, because you're so conscious of knowing what it is that you want in this world. Confidence oozes from this personality energy. So yeah, that's maybe just a quick example. Okay. So moving on then, the activity I'm going to ask you to participate in now is in your workbook on page 5. And I just want you to do a quick reflection, looking back on year 2020. So we're going to honor how you've grown and what you've embraced and what you are grateful for as a human being. So could I ask you to start with the best parts of 2020 and answer those 3 questions? I'm going to give it 2 minutes. Just for yourself, you're not going to share it with anybody. Just jot down your answers to those questions. Could I ask you to also do so for what was most challenging, the worst part for you for 2020? Okay, do we need more time? I don't know how to stop right now. All right. So, so doing that activity, we'll reflect on it shortly because it's going to inform the moment we're in, that intentional moment. And this is where I want to shift the focus and where I want to connect you with being and not doing. Goals are doing. Intentions is a way of being. So Wayne Dyer, who's a behavioral psychologist and coach, he's quoted as saying, I am a human being, not a human doing. So don't equate yourself with how well you do things in life. You aren't what you do. So our society is influenced by Western culture, and it's driven by our desire to belong and to fit in. So much of what our lives consist of is this whole doing thing based on having to perform, and there's that expectation and demand to always deliver in order to belong. So what that means is, as human doings, we lose sight of why we're here, and we get caught up in this life of living a life for the Jonases in order to stay relevant and to just be accepted. And it puts so much pressure on us. I mean, if you really think about it, this is where most of our sense of well-being and mental well-being is impacted negatively. It's because we can't keep up, because we feel that we're just not able to be who this world wants us to be. So Richard Branson did a very beautiful letter in 2016, and he actually coined this term of, we are human beings, we're not human doings. And this letter very nicely encapsulates how this insight brought him into a place of living a life of fulfilled happiness. And it was nothing to do with all the money he's made in the world. So I really encourage you, there's a link on your workbook as well, where you can go and download that and just get a bit of insight on what his teachings and learnings are around this. So on the next slide, you're going to start to connect now with the true intention of today, which is to set intentions, so that you can start to consciously focus on what is most important for you. So reflecting back, and on page 6 of your workbook, you're going to see there in the slide, you're now able to reflect back on the answers that you gave earlier for what you took out of 2020. And I just want you to consider, what would you keep because it serves you and you can control it? And what would you stop? Those things that you know is toxic for you and not in your control. So we'll give you again 2 minutes just to do this activity. So the reflection is on the first 2 statements. What would you keep and what would you stop? So this will inform the moment for how you will choose to feel and act going forward as well. And then when you've done with that, you can spend a bit of time where you then reflect on what you intend to do differently for 2021. Just jot that down as well. We call this mapping the mind from the past to the present, so that the present can positively influence the future. Okay, so once you've listed your intent and what you intend to do differently for 2021, I think it's this intention that's going to help you to ultimately and hopefully overcome the challenges that and obstacles one day at a time that 2021 will present. It's going to provide you with a resilience framework where, as an intention setter, you won't have this delay in how you will respond. But because of you being who you are, it will inform what the best response would be going forward. Okay, it's everybody ready for us to move on? All right. Okay, so now my invitation will be that whatever it is that you intend to do differently, how can we make this more meaningful for you? So could you phrase this as a bit of a statement? An example here is energy flows where intention goes, or for me, it is less is more. It's as simple as that. So remember, your intention is what you're going to do differently for 2021 in order to live a more meaningful life. So who'd like to share? Anyone?
Hi, Yvonne.
Marcus. Yes, hi.
So for me, I'm a AX, so I'm a complete enthusiast, and what I tend to do is I live a lot in the moment, and it sometimes looks like I'm very unorganized. It also looks like I'm not planning. So for this year, I'll definitely set my intentions to be more consistent and disciplined. And yeah, they say old habits die hard. And I think there's like a lot of habits for myself from the old norm of life that needs to fly away. And for me to become consistent in the new. Um, so yes, that will be my intentions for 2021.
So being consistent in the new is your intention statement
Yes.
for 2021. And can you see how this will start framing a way of being? And that will determine how you're going to respond to whatever
Yeah.
comes your way for the year.
Yes. Mm.
Fabulous. Okay, any other comments before I close out with the last slide? Okay, so for you, Marcus, for instance, and I just want to use and continue talking you through this, how can you cultivate this intention that you've now set for yourself? So you said your intention is to?
Is to be consistent throughout 2021 through the new norm. Yes.
To be consistent in every moment. I thought that, or in the new moment, it was something to do
Yes.
with new.
Okay.
So if you were to cultivate this as a way of being, it's all good and well to say it. The next step is to write it down, but how can you own it and enable the shift required, because you weren't doing this before?
Yeah.
Okay, so how can we now cultivate this as a way of being going forward? And one way to do this is to anchor your intention and to make it something visual outside of just writing it down, but to set it as a reminder somewhere. You could use your phone, your laptop screensaver, maybe a little sticky note in some discrete places where it just catches your eye as a reminder. Another way is to embody being intentional. So if you were to be consistent in the new moment, one example here, and to embody means to come up with a body practice so you can receive this intention. An example here would be every morning when you wake up, as you throw the blankets off and sit up, that you don't stand up immediately, but stay seated with your feet on the ground, and that you do so to feel the consistency of the ground under your feet. And that movement, somatic movement, then allows the body to receive that intention. And it just eventually then embeds itself as a way of being with capacity and building the skill automatically as a default, because you're now building a new habit. You're introducing a new habit into your life. And then the last one is to use a totem of some sort. So this was my totem last year. It's a little Pokemon. And I was trying to catch all the opportunities that this little Pokemon represented. And my son made this. You'll see it's even got a nice little shadow that he's thrown on it. It's quite cute, eh?
Yeah.
And this year, less is more. I have a bowl of gemstones. So this is a example of a system or a structure that can support you when you have breakdowns, because you're going to have breakdowns where you can't stay consistent. But if you have for me, being present and less is more, I like to hold this stone to remind me what that will enable me to be. And that's another way in which to cultivate your intention. So yeah, I think that kind of brings me to the end of the presentation. And yeah, I don't know, how do you feel about that, Marcus? Is this something that works for you?
Yeah, this is actually really powerful. It's not just setting the intention, because what I took from it is that the intention is much more deeper and much more engraved than what a goal is, and that actually makes sense why I lost a bit of consistency through the ages, because a goal is just something that you set in the moment, and when you don't achieve it, it dies hard. It tends to just fade away, and you start feeling guilty. But if you set an intention, it's more like having a vision, like something that you're working towards, and it's much more engraved. So, and these cultivations, it's really powerful in the way that it keeps you accountable, like having something that you can see, having someone that is there for you. Yeah, it's really, it's there to keep you on track, because cultivating these intentions, it's not going to be easy necessarily. So yeah, to help you to achieve them, and to be intentional for 2021, I would definitely say these are really good insights to yeah, to cultivating our intentions.
That way of being, really. And that's
Yes.
that's the invitation for today, is be more and do less.
Sure.
Really be more and do less. So I hope that you found this session helpful, and I just want to thank everybody for your contribution and for participating. So, and yeah, let your intention statement support you. As I hand over to you, Mark, to close off today's session.
Thank you, Yvonne. That was really good. 2 minutes over, but I think that was because Marcus was babbling on at the end there, so we'll blame it on him and not you. Yvonne, thanks. It was really insightful. And yeah, just to everyone who attended, thank you so much. I'd just like to say these are the types of things that we embody in our approach to financial planning. So it's not, we don't just focus on the money. We want to help you understand yourself, because like the iceberg, there's so much underneath, which we can unpack together. You can unpack. Knowing those, all of those points underneath is really what helps us to help you achieve the things you want to achieve. Starts with awareness, accountability. It's just part of the process that we follow in our financial planning journey with our clients. So thanks for attending, Yvonne. Thank you so much. This was really great. Just on the totem, I want to share quickly. We chatted about this the other day, and I've always got like a little Jeep on my desk here, and the totem, for me, it's just making some notes on this thing. Family is important, structure is important, lifestyle is important. But I drive a Jeep, and my son and I love the Jeep. We get in the car and we have a Jeep challenge. In Cape Town, everyone's got a Jeep. So looking at this little Jeep on my desk reminds me, when things are getting hectic and I'm getting stuck in work and whatever it is, just to take a step back. And what's important to me is getting in the Jeep, putting the roof down and driving with my son down the road. That's, those are the important things. So I think a totem really can add value. It's something small, but yeah, I didn't realize it before, but it was subconsciously here all along, everyone.
Yeah, and this
Thank
is
you,
how the
guys.
universe works if you believe in those things. Thank you, everybody. It's lovely to have spent the time with you today. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much, guys. Okay, we're going to sign off now. Cheers.